This is Unit 1, Lesson 12, and in this lesson you'll be able to draw and describe a translation by stating the directed line segment. So, just a quick little review about translations. A translation is a rigid transformation, which means the shape that you start with is congruent to the shape that you end with. And in translation, you're basically taking each point on the shape and you're sliding it a specific direction and a specific distance. So this blue triangle is being translated to this yellowish triangle in a directed line segment, which is called V. So if I were to take this and move it to point C, you'll notice that C gets translated up to this point. Now anytime that you move a point or translate a point, the new point is called the image, and it's given a special mark next to it called the prime mark. So C gets moved to C prime. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. D, using that same line V, D gets moved to a new point called D prime. And same with E. E gets translated to E prime. And you create a congruent shape that's been moved from one point to another along a directed line segment. So let's take a look at the lesson. This is lesson 12, defining translations, and you'll notice in the first section where it says, what do you notice, what do you wonder? This picture should look familiar. It's the one I just showed you, so you can make some observations now based on what I've already told you. You get to the second part of lesson 12, and there are a whole bunch of points, and it says in these 4 questions, the first one says, after its translation of the image V, the image of V is W. So you come down here and you say, okay, this is V, it gets moved to W. Find at least 3 other points that are taken to a labeled point by that translation. In other words, what other points in here have a similar movement from V to W? What other points move in the same direction, the same distance? Now, this is really just a estimating or a guessing game, but you can look closely and say, hey, Z to Y kind of looks the same as V to W, and U to R, and maybe T to P. In fact, you're going to notice there's a whole bunch of them in here. Your job is to just find 3. The second question, and the third question, and the fourth question are related to what I showed you in that first example and what I've just shown you. So I'm going to let you finish that. Otherwise, I'll just give you all the answers and you won't try it. Okay. In the third section, this is where you're going to actually use some tools and do some translating using the GeoGebra tools. So in the first section it says translate triangle ABC by the directed line segment. The directed line segment is the arrow or the vector. So the directed line segment from A to C. So the tool that you would use in GeoGebra is this tool right here that has this little vector. And if you click on it, it says translate by vector. So I'm going to click on that, and down here it tells you the directions. Select an object and then select the vector. So we're going to click on the triangle. Notice that it highlights, and then we're going to click on the vector. And by clicking on the triangle and then on the vector, it takes this triangle and translates each point to the right, just like this vector, that distance. Alright, then it asks you a couple questions. Answer those on your own. And then the second part says translate segment DE, that's this segment, by the directed line segment W. Label the new endpoints D prime, E prime. Okay, so we're going to try this again. Click on the translate by vector. It says select an object and then the vector. So carefully we're going to select the line. Notice that it highlights. Now first couple times I did this, when I selected it, it didn't select the whole object, so make sure that it highlights. And then you're carefully going to select the vector, and there's the new translation. Then it says connect D to D prime and E to E prime. So I'm going to take this segment, I'm going to call it connect D to D prime, E to E prime. What shape have I just drawn? So these are the questions that I'm going to have you answer. Now, in a previous lesson, I suggested to you that maybe you go down and look at the summary first, and that will help you understand what you're supposed to be learning in this lesson. So I'm going to suggest that you do that right now, and then go do the lesson so that you have a better understanding of what you're trying to learn. And that's it. If you complete the lesson and go through each of the terms and review any new terms and review some of the old terms, that should prepare you to do the practice problems. All right, good luck.